How are you all? I hope everybody is doing well. And in the last class, we have discussed about gastroesophageal reflux disease. And today in this class, we are going to discuss the topic that is inflammatory bowel disease. It's also called as IBD. So before going to that, I'll start sharing these slides. Okay. So the topic is inflammatory bowel disease. That means just inflammation of bowel. What is bowel? Bowel is nothing but large intestine. So inflammatory bowel disease means, what do you mean by inflammatory bowel disease? 1 minute. So that I can change the settings. No. So what is inflammatory bowel disease? Inflammatory bowel disease means there will be inflammation in the bowel walls. What do you mean by bowel walls? That means the walls of the large intestine. So it is of two different types, that is Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. So depending on the depending on which region it got affected, we will be differentiating it into Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. Okay. So now we are going to see the definition. So there are two forms of inflammatory bowel disease, that is ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. What is ulcerative colitis? Ulcerative colitis is, it's a mucosal inflammatory condition which is confined to rectum and colon. Colitis means inflammation of the colon. So because of, and also there is an ulceration and inflammation, so we call it as ulcerative colitis. It is a mucosal inflammatory condition confined to rectum and colon. Okay. Then what is Crohn's disease? Crohn's disease is nothing but it's a transmural inflammation of gastrointestinal mucosa. It may occur in any part of the GI tract. So both etiologies is exact etiology is not known, but they have a common pathogenic mechanism. So when coming to etiology, the factors involved in causing inflammatory bowel disease include infectious agents, genetics, environment, and the immune system. Mostly it is caused due to some genetical changes. So, and apart from genetical changes, it also includes infectious agents, environment, and the immune system. Then coming to pathophysiology, what is the pathophysiology of inflammatory bowel disease? The microflora of the GI tract may provide an environmental trigger to activate the inflammation. When this, whatever I think, the gastrointestinal tract will be lined with some flora and fauna. Will be lined with some fauna. That means useful bacteria. It is lined along this gastrointestinal tract. Whatever that is there, it only directly it triggers the inflammatory mechanism and activates the inflammatory mediators. Generally, it should not do that, but in some kind of conditions, like it may be due to immunological factors or environmental factors or genetic factors, instead of being protective, they'll trigger the activation of inflammation. The microflora triggers the activation of inflammation. And also several genetical markers and loci have been identified that occur frequently in patients with IBD. That means chances of genetical changes are also seen in some cases of IBD. And then abnormal regulation of the normal immune response or an autoimmune reaction. That means, as already you know what is an autoimmune reactions. That means whatever the foreign particles are there, to counteract that, our body will produce some kind of cells to counteract that. But in case of autoimmunity, whatever the host cells are there, they will be considered as a foreign particles, and our body will damage our own cells. That so it releases some, it acts on self, and it creates some self antigens. So that we call it as autoimmune reaction. Okay. So Th1 cytokine activity is excessive in case of Crohn's disease, and there is increased expression of interferon gamma in the intestinal mucosa, and production of interleukins 2 are features of the immune response in Crohn's disease. That means in Crohn's disease, Th1, that means tyrosine 1 cytokine activity and interferon gamma and interleukin 12 are elevated in case of Crohn's disease. And then coming to and then there will be increase in the TNF alpha in case of ulcerative colitis. And also in case of both this ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, anti-neutrophil cytoplasmic antibodies will be elevated. These are the autoimmune factors which gets elevated in case of both, but the anti-neutrophil cytoplasmic antibodies will be elevated in the higher range in case of ulcerative colitis compared to Crohn's disease. Clear? Once again, I'll explain you. So whatever the microflora it is there, it should be act as a protective layer. Instead of being acting as a protective layer, it will trigger the inflammatory mechanism. And also there will be involvement of autoimmune cells and leading to activation of the self antigens, and there will be release of autoimmune cells like the cytokine activity, interferons gamma, TNF alpha, interleukin 2. These things will be elevated and they cause the inflammation of colon. Okay, where in case of ulcerative colitis only rectum and colon gets involved, but in case of Crohn's disease any part of the intestine may gets involved. And it was found that smoking appears to be protective in case of ulcerative colitis, but because of smoking the effect which causes the Crohn's disease will be elevated. The exact mechanism is not known. And then the use of NSAIDs may trigger disease occurrence or lead to disease flares. Why? Because whatever the NSAIDs are there, as we have studied in the peptic ulcer disease, they will inhibit prostaglandin production. That means there will be decreased mucosal production. So as there is no mucosal production, there will not be proper lining of the colon, and thereby it further elevates the disease. And then ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease differ in two general respects, that is anatomical sites and depth of involvement. That means, as I said, that in the case of ulcerative colitis, the anatomical site involved is only rectum and colon, but in case of Crohn's disease, any part of the GI tract may get involved. Okay. So this is the pathophysiology. Luminal flora or dietary antigens, whatever the food we take, or the already existing flora which is present in the intestine, due to some genetical susceptibility or environmental factors or they'll activate abnormal immune response in the gut, that is not in the intestine. So there will be imbalance of these enzymes, and there is increased cytotoxicity caused due to CTL and natural killer cells, and increased activation and effects of these autoimmune cells. All of these, what will they do? They will cause the inflammatory damage in the gut mucosa. Okay, so here is another flow chart which is explaining that what are the environmental factors, stress, diet and smoking, all these cause IBD, and also impaired immunity cause IBD, and microbial flora also cause IBD, and genetic susceptibility. So we can, when we are studying this etiology, I have already said that environmental factors, autoimmune factors, genetical susceptibility, microbial flora. So all these causes IBD. How? Environmental factors, that is through stress, diet or smoking. Microbial flora, they will release some kind of metabolites which are toxic or which cause irritation to the mucosal layer. And impaired immunity, it will cause the release of certain cytokines which will activate in inflammatory reactions and cause inflammatory bowel disease. And genetic susceptibility, because of this there will be release of certain it leads to like polymorphisms and activation of HLA and MHC antigens and autophagy and interlectins, that means breaking down of these epidermal layers. All this leads to formation of leads to the cause of inflammatory bowel disease. Clear? And then now, so we are going to discuss each and every topic clearly. So ulcerative colitis. Ulcerative colitis is confined to colon and rectum, and it affects the mucosa and also submucosa of that region. So initially the primary lesion occurs in the crypts of mucosa. That means there will be some villi-like structures in the mucosa. So that thing will get, in that region there will be formation of lesions, and it may lead to a crypt abscess later on. So initially there will be formation of small lesions, primary lesions, and then it leads to crypt abscess. And what are the minor complications? Hemorrhoids, fissures, perirectal abscess, all these are the minor complications of ulcerative colitis. And major complication includes toxic megacolon. That means completely infected and its size is very much increased due to inflammation. That we call it as toxic megacolon. And it leads to, it will be when there is toxic megacolon, the symptoms will be like high grade fever will be there, Tachycardia will be there, that means increase in the heart rate. And distended abdomen, due to heavy infection there will be distended abdomen, and also due to increase in its size there will be distended abdomen, and elevated white blood cell count in the blood, and dilated colon will be dilated. So these are the symptoms we can see in case of toxic megacolon. And also it leads to some complications in the liver, that is hepatobiliary complications like fatty liver, pericholangitis, chronic active hepatitis, cirrhosis, sclerosing cholangitis, cholangiocarcinoma, and gallstones. So all these things are the hepatobiliary complications. And then ocular complications like iritis, episcleritis, conjunctivitis. So these occurs commonly, like in range of 2 to 29% of patients get affected with these ocular complications, like those who are having ulcerative colitis. And then skin and mucosa lesions, erythema nodosum, pyoderma gangrenosum, aphthous ulceration, and sweat syndrome. See, these are the complications we see in case of skin and mucosa lesions. So you need to study these, what are the terms, and you should tell me in the next class what does each term mean. Okay, all is it leads to inflammation of particular part in the hepatobiliary region. It causes inflammation and causes some kind of effects. And also in the ocular region also there will be inflammation of iris, episcleris, conjunctiva. In the skin and mucosal lesions also the same thing will be seen. And then clinical presentation of ulcerative colitis. The patient will be complaining of severe abdominal pain and frequent bowel movements. That means the frequency of bowel movements, like passing of stools, will be more. Frequency of stools will be more, and most often it is associated with blood in stools. Here the blood will be like in very fresh blood. Whereas in case of PUD, the blood will be black. The stools will be black color due to that bleeding in the upper GI tract. As it is a lower GI tract infection or lower GI tract inflammation, whatever the blood comes out with the stool will be fresh blood. And there will be weight loss. As why? Because there will not be proper absorption of food, and because whatever the food or many of the vitamins and minerals gets absorbed in the intestine, right? So because of the inflammation of the intestine, that absorption cannot be taken place. So it leads to malnutrition and weight loss. Fever and tachycardia. If the disease is severe, if the infection is severe, or inflammation is severe, then there will be fever and tachycardia. Because of ocular complications, the patient may experience the symptoms like blurred vision, eye pain, photophobia. That means irritation to light. They can't bear the light when they are doing ocular movement. And arthritis, raised tender red nodules that vary in size from 1 centimeter to several centimeters. That will be seen on the skin. And then what are the physical examinations? Hemorrhoids, fissures, perirectal abscess may be present. And then iritis, uveitis, episcleritis, conjunctivitis can be seen in case of when they will be associated with ocular movement. That means the doctor will ask you to move your eyeballs. So when you're moving, you will be having some kind of pain sensation when you are rotating your eyeball. So that can be seen in the physical examination. And then dermatological findings includes erythema nodosum, pyoderma gangrenosum, and aphthous ulceration. In this, there will be red color papules. In this, it will be associated with some kind of pus. And then both are same. And then laboratory test, it includes decreased hematocrit or hemoglobin. As there is a rectal bleed, there will be decrease in the hemoglobin. And also in the rectal region, the supply of blood, the supply of capillaries will be very high. So because of the inflammation over there, there will be large amount of blood loss. So it leads to decrease in the hemoglobin. So we have we have to conduct this. We have to note this, identify the levels of hemoglobin. And increased ESR, erythrocyte sedimentation rate will be elevated in case of inflammation. So that also will be elevated. Leukocytosis, when there is more amount of when there is more inflammation or the infection, leukocytes, that means the white blood cells count will be increased. And hypoalbuminemia, that means decrease in the protein levels, albumin levels, that can be seen when liver gets involved in this IBD. That too with severe diseases. So that in that conditions we have to give albumin injections, we have to supply albumin IV intravenously. And then we have to know perinuclear anti-neutrophil and cytoplasmic antibodies. This is to rule out whether it is autoimmune disorder. Okay, so these are the clinical presentations of ulcerative colitis. And then coming to Crohn's disease is a transmural inflammatory process. So in this, the terminal ileum is the most common site of the disorder. That means ileum gets involved here, and then patients will be often having some bowel separating segments of diseased bowel. That means there will be like bowel shape will be in this way, but in this condition there will be bowel separating segments will be there. That means part of that bowel gets damaged, and again a part is normal, and again a part is damaged. In that way, that kind of thing we can see in case of Crohn's disease. And what are the complications? Complications include small bowel stricture. That means there will be stricture, means narrowing of the lumen of this bowel, that we call it a small bowel stricture, with subsequent obstruction. So when there is a stricture, obviously there will be obstruction, which is a complication and which requires immediate surgery. And then fistula formation is common. Fistula is nothing but a bypass, like another passage to let the contents out. Like usually what are the bowel contents are there that comes out through rectum, colon, and anus. So that thing will not be done. A sideway bypassage will be taken place, that we call it as fistula. Or there may be joining of two bowel walls, that we call it as fistula. Because of damage of one wall, this is a single passage. Because of the formation of another passage, and both gets damaged and unites together and forms a false cavity, false opening to the outside, that we call it as fistula. And then systemic complications of chronic disease include Crohn's disease include arthritis, iritis, skin lesions, and liver disease. Because in this disease, what it causes activation of inflammatory mediators. They not only affecting these bowel walls, they also cause the inflammation of other organs, leading to these kind of complications. And the nutritional deficiencies like weight loss, iron deficiency anemia, because iron, vitamin B12, folate, albumin, potassium, calcium, everything gets absorbed from the bowel wall. So when it is damaged, when it is inflamed, all this absorption cannot be taken place, leads to nutritional deficiencies like weight loss, iron deficiency anemia, vitamin B12 deficiency, folate deficiency, hypoalbuminemia, hypokalemia, and osteomalacia. All these are due to improper or impaired absorption of nutrients from the bowel wall due to inflammation. Is that clear? Okay. So what are the symptoms the patient may present with? The patient may present with symptoms like diarrhea, that means passage of more number of stools, and abdominal pain, and perirectal or perianal region, that means there will be a formation of lesion around the region of this rectum or anus. The codes of Crohn's disease is characterized by, so in case of Crohn's disease, it will be remissions will be there. That means once it gets cured, again there will be recurrent attacks of this disease can be seen, and also exacerbation can be seen. That means the disease will be very much compared to the previous episode, that we call exacerbation. And some patients may be free of symptoms for years. So though they are having Crohn's disease, as it is a genetic disorder, they will not be having symptoms till so many years, but after later on, it will start showing some kind of effects. So there is a index called Crohn's disease activity index and the Harvey-Bradshaw index. These are used to gauge the response to therapy and determine the remission. So this kind of tools will be used in order to identify the chances of remission, and also to determine the remission, and also to guess what was the response of the patient to the treatment. So the disease activity may be assessed and correlated by evaluation of serum C-reactive protein concentrations. So CRP will be elevated in case of autoimmune and inflammatory reactions. So we'll conduct this CRP to assess whether the disease is remitting, or again it's getting, or whether it is solved or not. For that we'll be going to check C-reactive protein. So here is a comparison between Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. So here, so these are the differences between Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. What were the paths involved? What are the things involved? And what are the symptoms will be there? So once go through this table. Okay. And then, So these are the clinical presentation of Crohn's disease: malaise, fever, abdominal pain, frequent bowel movements, hematochezia, fistula, weight loss and malnutrition, arthritis. And in case of physical examination, abdominal mass can be felt. That means if you just press the patient over that abdomen region, there you can see some tenderness and mass from outside. And perianal fissure or fistula will be seen. And laboratory tests we conduct for Crohn's disease include there will be increased or elevated white blood cell count and raised erythrosedimentation rate and anti-cyclomine. So these are the antibodies that we can see in case of infection. And then treatment. So what is the treatment that we follow for both ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease? So the first and foremost goal of our treatment is that is the resolution of acute inflammatory process, and then resolution of attendant complications. So we have to stop or we have to prevent the formation of complications, and alleviation of systemic manifestations, and maintenance of remission from acute inflammation, and surgical palliation if at all, if it is required, that in case of like strictures, small bowel stricture and all, or if there is some severe hemorrhoids or recurrent hemorrhoids, then we have to go for surgery. And the other is cure of the disease. So non-pharmacological treatment include, as there is a protein energy malnutrition because absorption will not be taken place, so we have to give enteral supplementation. That means enteral supplementation means that we have to provide food entirely. That means we have to give food, more amount of nutrients and protein should be given. If the patient is not getting improved with this enteral supplementation due to lack of absorption and all, then we have to go with parenteral nutrition. That means whatever the nutrients we have to provide, that will make it formulate in a parenteral medication, and that will be given through IV route. That we call it as parenteral nutrition. That can be done only when there is severe malnutrition, and those who fail to take enteral supplementation, in that cases we'll go for parenteral nutrition. And then in some conditions like perforation, protracted bowel wall, and when the patient is having severe vomitings, and if the patient is having short bowel syndrome or any stenosis in the intestinal wall, in that conditions we cannot give enteral supplementation. So in that conditions we'll go with parenteral nutrition. And then probiotic formulas will be given. Why? Because the whatever the flora which is lining the bowel wall gets eliminated or eroded. So we have to provide some probiotics for inducing and maintaining and remission in ulcerative colitis. And then the indications for surgery with Crohn's disease are not as well established. That means in case of Crohn's disease, surgery is not that much required. And then there is a high recurrence rate of Crohn's disease after surgery. That means even after conducting the surgery, in case of Crohn's disease, there is a high recurrence. That means there is no permanent cure even after giving surgery. So it's better to avoid surgery and go for medications. So this is the non-pharmacological treatment. That means what are the diet we should take. What are the diet we should take? It includes like these are the foods to be consumed and these are the foods to be avoided. So high fiber diet should be taken, low fat diet should be taken, and should avoid caffeine and all. And high sugar should not be taken, processed oil should be avoided, alcohol should be avoided, gluten, that means only that white bread cannot be consumed, like wheat bread can be consumed. And these are the foods that can be given, like it includes high fiber diet and nuts and all can be given. So these are the foods to be given in case of inflammatory bowel disease. And then pharmacological therapy for ulcerative colitis. I think this topic we'll discuss in the next class. In the next classes, we'll discuss regarding the pharmacological therapy of inflammatory bowel disease. Okay. So what are the treatment we'll give for Crohn's disease and what are the treatment we give for ulcerative colitis? That topic will be seen in the next class. I think it's clear for you. So if you have any doubts, you can ask me. And is that clear? In this, we have discussed regarding definition of inflammatory bowel disease and the differences between ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, and also the causes of this disease, and also the pathogens of the disease, and non-pharmacological treatment, and what are the clinical findings, what are the clinical signs and symptoms, and physical examination point of view, what are the things we have to observe in case of both UC and CD, and And also we have discussed that what are the complications that we get in case of ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. And we have studied some non-pharmacological treatment. In the next class, we'll be discussing regarding the pharmacological treatment of inflammatory bowel disease. Is that clear? I hope and everybody is clear with this topic, and thank you for your patience and thank you for listening. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.